of the program. When we first created this program, it was my dream to have Ami Ayalon as our first guest, and I'm really so happy that we succeeded in securing him. As someone who made Aliyah after many formative years in Habonim Dror youth movement, and who lived in Israel for 22 years, which involved labor Zionist politics, organizing and activism, and 15 years in the IDF. I spent a lot of time working in education and leadership. And Ami was someone that I admired and looked up to and followed for all those years that he was in the Navy and after that. So I'm really pleased, and I think that his book and his example and his leadership is something that can inspire us in our new educational series. I'd like to introduce Meital Kowalski, who is a recent arrival in Vancouver from Toronto, but has come here via a very circuitous route, including Winnipeg and Israel, kibbutz, moshav, and city. She is our volunteer program coordinator and the curator for what I'm calling AS, the Ameinu Activist Series. This is our first contribution to widening and deepening our knowledge and understanding of not only what is going on in Israel and across Canada, but also we want to just make this something that is meaningful for people. And Meital has really been a big ideas person, and she's been surrounded by and passionate about social justice as they pertain to Israel, civil society, and diaspora Jewry. So I'd like to welcome Meital, welcome Ami, who's, I'm glad, is already drinking wine in Israel, and to wish everybody a great conversation with all of us this morning. I'll turn it over to you, Meital. Thank you.
Awesome. David, thank you so much for that introduction. I know we're all really excited to get started. So I am going to fast track anything that I need to say, but we do have a little bit of housekeeping to get to. So first and foremost, yes, so honored and humbled to have Ami Ayalon joining us today. For those that don't know, Ami is the former director of the Shin Israel Security Service, former commander of the Israeli Navy, government minister, and former member of the Knesset party with the Labor Party. Most recently, Ami wrote his memoir, which hopefully everyone here has read or at least started to read because it's wonderful, called Friendly Fire: How Israel Became Its Own Worst Enemy and Its Hope for the Future. The book is insightful, it's at times challenging, at times heartbreaking, and it's ultimately hopeful. Today, we're going to do a deep dive into the book, into Ami's insights, and we're going to delve into some challenging questions. I do just want to mention that because I want to say that the chat is open. We encourage questions, debate, and comments, but we do ask that you remain respectful to our speaker, our host, and your fellow audience member. We do have a zero tolerance policy for any racism or hateful language. I'll take that opportunity to introduce our tech maven, Casey Soar, who's going to be monitoring the chat, and it can help you out if there's any tech issues. And yes, we will have time for a Q&A at the end. To ask your question at this time, if you go to the bottom of your screen where you have reactions, there's a raise hand option. When we do open up for questions, you can feel free to use that reaction to raise your hand. Casey will call on you to ask your question. If you'd rather not ask in your own voice or in your own words, you can also put it in the chat, or you can just do it the old-fashioned way of actually raising your literal hand. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm so excited to welcome Ami Ayalon. Ami, baruch haba. Welcome to Ameinu Canada. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great weather in Canada, I mean. Okay, thank you very much.
So we're going to get started. Even if you haven't read the book, if you've even just looked at the cover, you're still with us because we're going to get started with the title of the book, specifically the first 2/3 of the title, Friendly Fire: How Israel Became Its Own Worst Enemy. It's a loaded start. Can you tell us about that, what you mean and how you came to that?
Yes, first of all, I understand that it is difficult to read and difficult to understand. Most Israelis believe that our enemies are somewhere in Iran or Hezbollah, or Syria, or Palestinian Islamic Jihad. We have many of them. What I claim is that our major enemy, we are our major enemy. And we have all the tactics, strategies, and we have the tools to face all the other enemies. This is what we have been doing during the last, 100 years, 70 years, or since we start to count. We do not understand that finally we are relatively successfully, we are doing it successfully. We were so successful, and in a way, what I claim that we won the war against our major enemies. We have to remember that what happened during or between 1967 to 2002, 1967 after the Six-Day War, it was a great military victory, but immediately after there was a 3 no's in Khartoum, which means no to recognition, no to negotiations, and no to peace with Israel. And if you see the gap between this convention and the decision of the Arab League, when they published the Arab Peace Initiative in 2002, in which they accept Israel along the lines of 1967, and they accept the concept of exchange of territories, of swap, and they even accept the idea that Israel is a Jewish state, because once they say that they accept all international resolutions, 181 means that there will be a Jewish state and an Arab state. So I believe that if my father would live to see it, he would tell me that the Messiah just came. This is victory. Victory is not to kill all our enemies. Victory is to achieve or to create the political reality for which we fight. And this is exactly what happened. So we won this war, but we don't understand it, and we are going on. We are going on fighting. And when we do it, we are losing the support of the international community. We create enemies among even states who recognized us. It is not a mistake that the Egyptian president who signed peace did not visit Israel. It's not a mistake, or the Jordanian king did not visit Israel, because they understand that their people will not let them until we shall agree to the reality of 2 states. And meanwhile, when I look, and this is exactly what I did for almost 4.5 years when I was the director of the Israeli Shin Bet after the assassination of our Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, I see the rifts between the tribes. You know, our former president, Robbie Rivlin, described our society as a society of 4 tribes. And if you will come to Israel, you will listen to the debates in our parliament. You will read our newspapers. It's full of hatred. And we do not agree on anything. We do not agree on our future. In our parliament today, we cannot achieve agreement of more than, less than 50% will sign on the future of Israel based on our Declaration of Independence. So we do not agree on what is right and what is wrong, and what is good and what is bad. And this is a major danger and the major threat to Israel. So this is, in a long speech, the idea behind this title.
Thank you. So I want to expand on that a little bit more. There's something in your book, you talk a lot about the intra-communal within the Israeli community, the rifts there, and you're speaking about it here as well. You say in the book, the source of Israeli pessimism is not the Palestinian hostility. It came from us, or more precisely, from the fatally flawed Zionist stories we tell ourselves about the past. So what are those stories and why do they evoke pessimism specifically?
Look, first of all, the way I read the book, I understand that everybody read it the way, he read. Finally, every book is depend on the reader, not on the writer. But the way I understand the book, it's a very, very optimistic book. It's not a pessimistic book. But my optimism comes not from the idea that tomorrow, I don't know, something great will happen. And even I don't think that I ever accepted the concept of peace now. We do not quite understand the concept of peace, but we can create a better future. And the optimism comes from the concept that I believe that it is in our hands. And this is the way I understand the whole Zionist concept. It was a dream. When people created the concept in the end of the 19th century, not many people believed that this dream will create a different reality. So it was based on two concepts, which is optimism and the belief that it is in our hands. You asked about pessimism. Yes, this is something that we lost. And I believe finally, and this is something that I understood only lately when I was searching the country and met people in order to write this book. It comes from our past. We in Israel, we do not separate between the concept of defense and the concept of security. Defense is something that we can measure. We can create every system in order to defend ourselves from attacking missiles or every threat. I know exactly how much money, how much manpower, all the input, and I can measure the output. I can tell you that against every attacking missile, we created a system that will give us between 95 to 98% of defense, which is great. But security is something totally different. In order to understand security, we have to touch the most sensitive nerves of our existence. We have to go to the past. So we Jews, and I represent myself the way I understand my friends, we have defense, but we are looking for something different, and we are looking to the wrong place. Because defense, we have to ask our leaders, our spiritual leaders, and we are asking our military organization to create something that it is not their responsibility and it is not in their capability. So in Israel, I think that this is the only society, or probably the only country in which you might ask a person, tell me what will happen in Israel, how you see Israel 40 years from now. And too many people will tell you or will ask you, will Israel survive in 40 years from now? So it comes not from the way we understand the present, it comes from our fears. Some will explain you that, from, I don't know, there's the diaspora or the pogroms or the Holocaust, or I don't know, the Spanish Inquisition. Because this is the way we understand our history. So we created a great ability to understand threat and to face threat. But we are so good at it that we lost the ability to see opportunities. And in every conflict, in every crisis, behind every threat, there is an opportunity. We do not see it. And the only answer that we have is military answer. And we are creating more enemies and more threats. So I think that our pessimism comes from something very deep in our narrative. And yes, I understand that Zionism was a great revolution. A great revolution is a moment in which a society or a group of people create a new past, a new present, and a new future. And this is what the Zionist movement did. In a way, my parents created a new past, meaning they erased 2,000 years of history. Mishnah, Talmud, Rishonim, Achronim, they didn't care about it. They left their houses. They created a new present. They left their houses. They came to Israel. They did not believe that by praying, we shall create the state of Israel. They created new heroes, heroes that were erased by Judaism for 2,000 years. The people who committed suicide on Metzadah, they are not mentioned in the Mishnah and the Talmud. These were the heroes of my childhood. Bar Kochva, he was in the eyes of the people who wrote the Mishnah. He was responsible for the killing and the creation of the diaspora. For us, he was a hero. So they created a new past, they created a new present, and they created a new vision of the future. And the challenge today is, yes, we discuss the present, but we do not understand that we have to face something much more difficult. We have to understand, we have to create a new narrative to the past and a new vision to the future. And in a way, this is what I'm trying to do in the end of the book.
Thank you. I want to touch on something that you just said. You said something really interesting about having lost the ability to see opportunities. And there was something that really struck me in the book that I wanted to ask about that I think really goes to that. You talk about a narrative that was really solidified by Ehud Barak following the Camp David summit in 2000, that there is no partner for peace with the Palestinians. I hear this a lot. I think we say this a lot in Israel and in the diaspora. In a way, it almost makes us feel good about our own narratives. You know, we want Palestinian statehood, we want Palestinian sovereignty, but we've done all we can do. Where are our partners? There is no partner for peace. I was surprised to see in the book that you actually call that line the single most catastrophic PR stunt in Israeli political history.
Right.
I'm curious why you say that and what we replaced that line with.
Well, because this is the reality. I was very close to the process at that time. In a way, I think I understood or I knew the process better than any other Israeli, not because I'm smarter, not because I'm more clever or whatever. I was the director of the Israeli Shin Bet, and I knew about Palestinians more than any other Israeli, including the prime minister. And I knew even about our leaders more than sometimes they know about themselves. So this was the reality that I saw. I was very close. But this is not the problem. What I tried to explain to Ehud Barak when he came from Camp David telling us that there is no partner, I said, we did not send you, or we did not elect you as a prime minister in order to tell us or to look for a partner. We voted for you in order to create a partner, because we have to understand we are not outside this equation. We are part of the reality. We can influence. And in order to create a partner, you have to do something. You have to believe that you can create. I do not know, I cannot claim that Arafat was a partner, but I really don't know, because we never tried. And in a way, I explained our mistakes. So in order to understand how I came to understand the reality the way I do, you have to shift from a language of blame to a language of responsibility. Language of blame is a very problematic state of mind, because we can go on killing each other and to feel great, because it is not our fault. They should be blamed. And this is, in a way, what we are doing for many years. We blame them, they blame us, and everything is great. We can do it for, I don't know, dozens of years. It will bring us nowhere. It will bring us more violence, more hatred. By the way, even between us, because we do not agree. Language of responsibility, everything starts with a question. What did I do in order to create a partner? Did I do everything? What could I do differently in retrospect? So it's a whole different concept. And part of our problem is that we as a society, we do not speak the language of responsibility. We blame everybody, even within Israel. We blame the prime minister, we blame the politicians, we blame everybody. But not enough people try to understand. Many years ago, a person that I'm sure that you know his name, Robert McNamara. He was a defense minister during the Vietnam War. And some people tell that he was probably the person who created the strategy and the ideology behind this war. And many years later, I think it was in probably 2001 or 2002, he participated in a movie, documentary, Fog of War. Now, in Fog of War, many years after they lost, I don't know, between 30 to 40,000 people, Americans, and nobody counts how many Vietnamese died during this war. He comes to the American people telling them the lessons that I, Robert McNamara, who led this war, learned from this event. Now, the first, by the way, this movie, this documentary, he won the Oscar in 2002. Now, the first lesson is telling to the American people, we have to empathize with the enemy, not to sympathize, not to agree, but to understand the way he sees us, to understand his motives. And he said, we did not understood the whole concept of the domino effect, etc., during the Cold War, etc., was wrong, was totally wrong. It was not based on facts. But we did not stop, and we did not think, how do we look in the eyes of our enemy? Now, I saw this movie in 2002, and this was one of the major reasons why we created, me and Professor Sainu Seba, a kind of a peace initiative in which we aim to achieve hundreds of thousands of signatures. Finally, we achieved almost 500,000 signatures of Palestinians and Israelis on a piece of paper, one page, that describe a possible future based on 6 principles. So I'm saying it because it was it was unpopular. It was during the second Intifada. I lost many friends. But I remember I came back to my wife and I told her, look, what Robert McNamara did, it's horrible. I'm not going to wait 30 years to tell Israelis what are the mistakes that we did for so many years. We are sending our children, our youngsters. My grandson is in the army today. So I owe myself and I owe everybody the way I understand in Israel. I have to tell Israelis the truth the way I understand it, even if not many of them will agree.
Thanks for that. So you talk about empathy with the enemy, and you mentioned specifically your friend, Sainu Seba. The stories of your conversation with him in the book are incredibly fascinating. And I wanted to ask about those relationships that you had, not just with Sainu Seba, but also Palestinian security leadership. I'm curious if you've maintained any of those contacts, and if so, what do you think their perceptions are of what is currently taking place and what needs to happen to ensure a peaceful future, or even just create the options for peace of any kind?
Okay, I was so happy with my answer. So once you start your next question, I understand that I didn't give you a good answer to your question about the narratives. Why do I believe that it is a huge mistake, and it is not the way I understand the reality? We are living the real tragedy of the Middle East. That we mostly we do believe that that all what we wanted after the first Intifada, by the way. Until the first Intifada, I used to believe that, these places are ours, and it was given to us, etc., etc. Only the first Intifada brought to my mind that this narrative is wrong, and I have to start to understand. It is wrong because it leads us to a dead end. Anyhow, most Israelis believe that all what we wanted was to achieve security. And we wanted it so much after the first Intifada that we were ready to give Palestinians parts of our land. This was a narrative. And what did we get? We got violence, terror, Intifada. We feel betrayed. And we are right. This is exactly the narrative. What is the problem? The problem and the tragedy is that on the other side, if you will ask the average Palestinian, he will give you a totally different narrative. And he will tell you, and it is part of the answer to our relations, or my relations with Jibril Rajub and Muhammad Dahlan, and they were the commanders of the security organizations of the Palestinians. They will tell you, look, all what we Palestinians wanted is to get rid of the occupation. We wanted freedom, and we were accepted to give up on 73% of what is ours, the land of Palestine from the Jordan to the sea. Okay, we shall accept only the 27%, Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. And we were ready to give you security. And I can tell you, as a director of the Shin Bet at the time, that they did for a certain time all what they could. In several months, they even arrested more Palestinian terrorists than we did. We shared information. We had operations together in which we arrested terrorists in Nablus, in Shem, in Jenin, in Hebron. And he said, and all what we saw as a response, more settlements, more roadblocks, and more occupation. So we Palestinians, we feel betrayed. So the tragedy is both sides feel betrayed. They do not see our narrative. We do not see their narrative. And this is why empathy is so important. Yes, I have to fight terror, but I have to try to understand where it comes from. So if you ask me, yes, I have Palestinian friends. Professor Ameinu Canada, he's a Palestinian philosopher. He finished his PhD, I think, in Boston, in Harvard University. And he lives in Jerusalem. By the way, when I met Sari, in order to create our joint initiative, I remember the first question that he asked me. He said, Ami, tell me something about your past. Well, who are you? And I said, okay, my parents came from Europe, etc., during the 30s, etc., illegal immigrant. My mother came as a child. I said, no, I'm asking about your past. Tell me about your family tree. I said, look, Sari, I don't have a family tree. My parents erased their past in order to create a different past. I can tell you about the kingdom of Israel 2,000 years ago. But this is not my family tree. This is my history, my narrative, my culture. I have no idea. I am a member of a generation that we didn't have grandparents. All of them stayed in Europe and were assassinated during the Holocaust. And he tells me, okay, so I'll tell you something about my narrative, my family tree. His family tree starts in the 7th century, during the time of Muhammad, in Jerusalem. Since the 7th century, Nusayba family lives in Jerusalem. By the way, if you will visit Jerusalem and you will visit the Holy Church, since Christians are fighting each other, not less than Jews, by the way, so they need a Goy Shel Shabbat, a Muslim of Shabbat, in order to keep the key of the church. And Nusayba family are the keepers of the key of the Holy Church. Can I come to him, telling him, this is mine, and you are a stranger in this place? It's strange. So if you will ask me, what is the Palestinian narrative? Palestinian narrative is something between the narrative of Sari Nusayba. He's a philosopher. He believes that all people were created equal. And he doesn't believe too much in nationalism. And today he believes that all what he really wants is equal rights. He couldn't care less about nationality or religion, although he is a Muslim. He was the president of Al-Quds University. But he is a minority among Palestinians, and most Palestinians, all what they want is freedom. They want to see the end of occupation, and they believe in the narrative that they did almost everything in order to achieve their dream, but they feel betrayed because they understand that the world do not support them, and they are right. And the world is led by leaders who are looking for interest and not for, I don't know, moral rights or justice. And they are very frustrated and feel betrayed. And this is why they are becoming so dangerous. Because I used to explain to my friends, I said, hope is a great weapon. Because if you create hope, you reduce the power of your enemy. You cannot win an enemy who believes that he has nothing to lose. If he has nothing to lose, the whole concept of deterrence is what is a threat that I can use in order to make him change his demands. But if in his eyes he has nothing to lose, this is the limit of the military power. So Palestinians today do not have a lot of hope. I think that they lost the hope of achieving independence by diplomacy. And this was what they believed in during the 90s, by the way. Today, I think that many of them, they gave up. They couldn't care less. But too many of them still believe that in order to achieve freedom, all what they have is to use violence. And the day after Abu Mazen is not a day with a lot of hope.
Thanks. I do.
If you ask, what should we do in order to change it? First of all, you have to read the book, okay? Because this is a last chapter. In a nutshell, yes, we have to come up with a new narrative that starts with the idea that yes, this is ours. It was accepted by the international community. The land of Israel is a place in which the Jewish people was created, in which we created these great ideas that today are international, the idea that every person was created in the image of God. I try to, people, Jews, thousands of years ago, when in Egypt, they used to believe that pharaohs are gods. We came with a very strange idea. No, God is part of each of us. So we created great culture, great ideas, and everything was created in this place. Yes, this is ours, but it is not only ours. And if we really want to see Israel safe, Jewish, and democratic, we have to divide this piece of land. And it is in our hands. We can do it. It is not something that will be more difficult than the creation of the Zionist movement. But we have to accept the concept and to start to do it.
Thanks, Ami. I was going to ask a last question about hope because I wanted to end on a hopeful note, and you did it for me. So because it is nearing our time and because there's a lot of questions already coming in the chat, as well as from the audience, I'm going to stop talking. I want to open up to some others. If you asked a question in the chat and you prefer to ask it in your own voice and actually speak to Ami, I encourage you to put up your hand or unmute yourself in case you can get your question.
Maital, I see only your face, so you will see everybody. And
yeah, I'll take care of it. Don't worry.
Okay.
Okay, we've got a hand up here from, the username is Vicky on the screen.
Okay, except this is her husband, Jeremy.
That's okay.
You'll see, I mean, very, very interesting presentation, and I'm very interested in your point of view. Yossi Balin has been starting a new initiative with another Palestinian to suggest a confederation of states with a Palestinian state and a Jewish state. How does his initiative fit in with the philosophy and the themes of your book, and compare the two? Could you please?
Well, every federation or confederation is accepted. My future, the way I understand the future, should be based on three concepts. First, that we are equal. All men are equal, and everybody deserves, etc., etc. You know, almost like the, I don't know, American covenant or whatever. Anyhow, so the second one, that each of us is part of a culture, community, and history. So each of us has the right to define himself and to declare himself as a, I don't know, people, and to create his own community. And third, that we have to do it. Oh, sorry. The third is that the fact that we are equal but not equal. Variety or diversity is an asset, is not a liability. So every form of governance that will create or will take in account all these three concepts, I believe that even in order to create a confederation, we have to accept the idea that there will be places for Jews and there will be places for Palestinians. Where exactly will be the border, for me, is not very important. I accept the idea that today I think that the green line with a change of territories is more viable. I cannot defend, I cannot tell you that it is more just, but I think that it is more viable. I think that to jump from the reality of today to something that we call it confederation, and I don't know enough on specific cases in the world, how does it work, or how it was created. So I don't have a very good answer. I just believe that we are closer to two states than to any other form of governance, but I'm not against confederation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ami. I want to read a question from the chat, since I don't see a hand up. There's a question from Sherry who asks, I hear people who are angry at Israel call Israel an apartheid state. Then Jewish people in defense say that Israel is not an apartheid state. There are Canadians who say that what our ancestors did to Indigenous people in Canada, Israel is doing to Palestinians. Can you give insight into this?
The way I understand, Israel is not an apartheid state, but if you will ask me, in the territories, we created an apartheid reality. What is apartheid? Apartheid is a place in which there are two different systems of law. If you are a Palestinian, you have to face a certain system of law. And if you are a Jew in the same place, by the way, you have a different obligations by law. Take, for example, Hebron. If first of all, it starts very, if you're a Jew, you get many times more water, many times more electricity. You are free to go almost to everywhere, almost no restrictions. And if you are a Palestinian, in the same territory, it is totally different. So this is, well, apartheid is a horrible term, but this is apartheid. It is not within Israel. Within Israel, yes, not everybody is equal, and we didn't give to our Palestinian citizens all what we promised to give them in our Declaration of Independence, but this is not an apartheid state because by law, they have to oblige to the same law. So it's totally different. But if you will ask me, the threat to Israel, that we are heading to an apartheid state, because if we shall not achieve, or if we shall not create a reality of two states or every other form of governance, I don't know, confederation, we are heading to a one state. And in this state, we shall lose our Jewish identity, because if we are not majority, and we are not majority from the Jordan to the sea, more or less 50%, if we are not majority, we do not have the right, and we do not have the power to dictate the language, the culture, whatever, of the public space. And we do have the right to do it now. In our house, in each house, or in each small community, a person could live according to restrictions of his own community, but in the public space, as long as we are majority, we have the right to give, to use our language, our symbols, etc., etc. But we are heading to one state. If you know, it's our government today. If you listen to our prime minister, he told us that for the next 4 or 5 years, we shall not negotiate with the Palestinians, because this land is ours, and that's it. There will be no Palestinian state. By the way, this is the first time ever since '67 that an Israeli government and an Israeli prime minister deny every option for negotiations, political negotiations. So yes, we are heading a huge challenge and a huge danger, which is to become an apartheid state.
I have Sid with his hand up over there. I'll call on you. Oh, you're
You are.
Thank you very much, and a very interesting talk. Thank you so much. So, in light of everything you say, the fact that it's heading towards a sort of a single state, and also a lot of people on, shall I say, the other side, whether it's internationally or the Palestinians, a lot of people very, very much do not want the two-state solution. They want the one state, the one Palestinian state. That's the big reality. So who at this point do we negotiate with, and how do we get around the fact that such a large number of people opposing Israel don't want to see two states, want to see one Palestinian state? I don't see how we get through that bottleneck.
Oh, it's a bottleneck start within us. You are saying that many people around us do not accept the concept of two states, but our prime minister does not accept the concept of two states, and this is why I am claiming that everything, we cannot expect somebody to save us from ourselves. I cannot expect from the American president or the international community to impose two states. It is our responsibility. We can do it. And there is a whole chapter in my book that I try to explain how we can do it without paying anything in security. I've been in security. I know what is security all about. Security should be first, but we can do it without securing anything. By the way, what I believe that if we shall have a Palestinian state, or even if we shall create only the process, the hope in which they will expect or will hope to have a state in 10 years from now, it will reduce dramatically the level of animosity and violence. I saw it during the years between 60 or 96 to 99, 2000. We created a level of security, it's in the year of 99, 2000, only one Israeli died as a result of terror. It was probably the most peaceful year when it comes to terror since the creation of this state. And we didn't do it alone. I was the director of the Shin Bet. I can tell you that we couldn't do it without the cooperation with our Palestinian friends. So everything starts with us. If we shall not dream, or if we shall not want two states, we shall not have two states. And the March of Fools, or how do you say the Barbara Tuchman? This book, I forgot the exact translation into English. We are marching to a dead end, and this is why I wrote the book. I'm trying to explain to many Israelis who lost, who are convinced that there is no partner. By the way, when you try to with whom we should negotiate, with every Palestinian leader who accepts the concept of two states and signed on the Arab Peace Initiative. Every Palestinian leader who signed on the Arab Peace Initiative is a partner for me. There are many of them. I can give you many names. By the way, Jibril Rajoub is one of them. There are many of them in our jail. It's not very, I can even tell you that, look, the tragedy is they will have to go to elections, by the way. They will have to elect a leader. And I can tell you, not the name, but I can tell you that if they will go to elections when the Palestinian street believes that there is a process, that there is hope, that they can achieve even 10 years from now, the end of occupation, and to see a Palestinian state along the lines was international resolutions and the Arab peace and exchange of territory, etc., etc. If they will believe, they will vote for a leader who believes in diplomacy. But if they will not believe in peace, if there will be no hope, they will go to elections and they will elect a leader who believes in violence and in terror. They will not give up on their dreams. They see themselves as people. They will go on fighting. So in a way, we cannot shape, but we can influence, not only on our future, even on the way they will elect their leaders. But we do not see it. And this was the reason to write this book and to have this conversation, by the way.
I mean, I know we're close to time, but can we take one more question?
I can.
Okay, Miller, you have your,
I sent my wife out, so I'm free for the next 15 minutes. It's okay.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question, and I'll keep it very brief. And I think it's sort of an obvious thing. I admire you very much, by the way, and I just read your book, and I think it's people like you who have the wisdom and experience with security in Israel that must initiate and plant the seeds for peaceful hope right now. And it's it seems like this is such a low point in history right now. The thing that I want to bring up is, like you were talking earlier on about the incommensurate narratives that that the two sides have. We tell ourselves one story, Palestinians are telling themselves another story. The story that they're telling themselves is, look at all of your settlements in the occupied territories. And that has become such an entrenched culture in Israel now. I want to ask you about that. How do we change that? It seems like it's so entrenched right now over so many years. What do you have to say about that?
Okay. Well, two answers. The first answer is very short, I don't know. But there is a longer answer. The longer answer, from what I learned, we have to suffer in order to understand. We did not believe in a Palestinian state alongside with Israel. Only the first Intifada, only Palestinian violence, popular uprising, brought us to understand the limits of our military power. And only after the first Intifada, we understood that, yes, this is ours, but if we really want to live or to have more safety, more security, and to maintain our democracy, we have to give up on parts of our land. It was a result of Palestinian violence. We left Lebanon as a result of terror and violence. I know Ehud Barak. He elected me as the commander of the Israeli Navy when he was the General Chief of Staff. When he was the General Chief of Staff, and even when he was a minister in Rabin's government, he didn't think that we have to leave Lebanon. I remember because for a certain time, I was the director of the Shin. He decided to leave Lebanon because of Lebanese terror and casualties, etc., etc. We created the wall or the security fence because of terror and the second Intifada, and we left Gaza because American pressure, Israeli civil society pressure, and the second Intifada. So situation should be much worse for us to understand. But if you come to visit Israel today, it's a great place. Our economy is flourishing. If you compare our economy in macro terms, to every other Western economy, it's a great economy. People are not dying in the streets. So when I come to my friends and I tell them, look, it is coming, they are telling me, okay, so what? Life is great. And you want us to pay something for the future. And with all the respect, we do not believe in prophecy. Anyhow, so I'm on one end, I'm optimistic, but from my experience, we shall not change our policy unless, and this is why I used to say, look, Abu Mazen is not a very young leader. By the way, today, if Palestinians will have elections, not more than 20 or 25% of the Palestinians, probably less, will vote for him. Today, they will vote for leader who believe in violence. It is not important whether he belongs to the Fatah or to the Hamas. It's the same, as long as he believes in violence. And I'm afraid, I don't know when, and I don't know what will be the level or the magnitude of violence, but we are not heading to a peaceful reality. And my optimism is from what I saw in the past. I saw in the past that when we suffer, we understand. That's it.
There's one more person with their hand up, Michal Fox. Can we do that one in 3 minutes or less?
And I want to integrate into that question just one thing, Ami. A lot of people here have spent a lot of time in Israel. A lot of people have lived in Israel for many years and are very active and concerned. And my question is, if you can integrate this with Michal's question, but what do you see the role of Zionists, people that are still consider themselves Zionists in Chutz La'aretz in this whole situation? And I think Michal, you can ask your question and maybe we hopefully can integrate it too.
George's. Okay.
Hi, this is George. Thank you for your presentation, Ami. I thought personally that the Abraham Accords had changed the whole equation in the Middle East. It is difficult for me to believe that it will not have any influence in the reality of our relationship to the Palestinians. That's my first observation and question. The second one, I do not understand who your partners are in this grandiose or this grand idea of yours of getting to another track or another path in the future of our relationship with the Palestinians. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to combine these two questions. You know, I was a lousy politician, but I learned something that no matter what you ask, what is important, what I say, or my answer. But anyhow, I'm saying it because I'll start with Abraham Accord, which was very important. I have to remind every peace agreement from, I don't know, economic point of view, and by the way, it's a major importance from the security point of view, because once we have an anchor in the naval terms in the Persian Gulf, so the whole military equation is different. So, but I'm not going to emphasize this aspect. The influence of the Palestinians is yet to be answered. On one hand, many people in Israel will say, "Okay, look, all your Arab states, partners, friends are leaving you alone, and you know, it's we can handle the Palestinians, especially when they are not supported by the other Arab League members. They signed peace." There is another aspect that we shall have to wait and to see. First of all, in case of violence, if you ask me, there will be a gap, a difference between several states. In the Emirates, they say, you know, the voice of the street is not very, very important. It's a kind of a kingdom, and you know, and they control everything. And the street doesn't make no importance on the way political decisions are made. But in Cairo, in Egypt, in Jordan, in Saudi Arabia, in Turkey, in many other states, the street is very, very powerful. I mentioned in the just, I don't know, an hour ago that, it is not a mistake that the Egyptian president did not come to visit. He knows that it will not be a presidential visit in Israel, will not be accepted by the Egyptian state, as long as we shall not change our policy with the Palestinians. By the way, it was the correct answer. Trump was considered very, very influential in Saudi Arabia. By the way, you understand that the peace with the Emirates was the result of Trump administration. Without this kind of pressure, they wouldn't do it. But it didn't work when it came to Saudi Arabia. The Saudi king said, and he published it, I will not be part of any peace agreement as long as you will not accept the basic ideas that we came and we presented in the Arab Peace Initiative. He sees himself as a founder of the Arab Peace Initiative. And when we renovated the relations with Morocco, the Moroccan king published a statement to his citizens saying that I, the king, one of the keepers of the Muslim holy places in Jerusalem, I will never give up on Jerusalem, etc., etc. So they will have to respond to their people. It is not very, very important as long as there is no violence between us, and even major violence between us and Palestinians. But if we shall face violence, they will have to respond, because even if it is not exactly a democracy, especially after 2011, leaders in the region understand the power of the street, and they have to take it in account. If you ask me who are my partners, I don't have partners, and but I can tell you that I didn't think that I have partners when I joined to Saynu Seiba years ago, and in the middle of the Second Intifada, when hundreds of people were dying on both sides of the no border, we came with the idea of let's try to create partnership, and again, almost 500,000 people signed, and according to the polls at that time, between 65 to almost 85 to almost 80% agreed to the vision of the two states based on these parameters, which are, by the way, Clinton parameters, Geneva parameters are very, very similar. So we did not invent anything new. So the fact that today people do not see it, and today, if you ask me, and I want to be very honest, I have many, many supporters. By the way, I am a member of Commanders for Israel. Almost 200 generals, admirals including, etc., etc. 90% of former military commanders. All of them believe in the same vision that I believe. So if you ask the Israeli military security share totally meaning between 80 to 90% of former commanders share my views. I understand that today, well, it's not very important because the Israeli street do not share my views, and I cannot claim that I have many partners. That's it.
So
Yes.
I know we're really, I don't want to overextend your welcome, and BB's going out. I would love you to say something about the Chutz La'aretz in 2 sentences.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yes. Okay. It's very, very important because if you ask me, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, my partners are among Jewish communities abroad. By the way, the idea to publish the book in English, and only later, by the way, it was translated to German, to Czech, and even to Arabic. And hopefully it will be published only in the next few months in Hebrew. But the idea was to publish it in the diaspora or abroad, because I believe that we Israelis are living too close to the events. We are too afraid. We feel the pain. And we created a wrong narrative, the way I understand the reality in the Middle East. But you have the perspective. On one hand, you know us, you know our narratives, you know our differences. I can even claim that you love Israel, especially you who participate in this meeting. So for me, you have a major role in this game. You have to stand up and to tell us exactly what you see. I think that this is your duty. Every time when I say it, people say, okay, but we are not, we do not serve in the IDF and we are not paying taxes, etc., etc. Well, let me tell you a secret. Less than 50% of Israeli youngsters are joining the IDF. And those who does not, it's not a shame anymore. And I don't want to elaborate on how many people are paying their taxes. It is corruption, etc. I don't want to go to it. I'm saying that in the world in which you can be a citizen in one place, but the whole concept of of Israel as a Jewish state, it's a very strange concept. What it means? It means that it is a state of every Jew who believes that he wants to be a member or a citizen. You can live in Canada and to be an Israeli citizen. This is a new world, and it's okay. By the way, yes, we have to redefine the concept of Yordim and the concept of, but this is globalization. For me, probably even we should shift to a different kind of a Zionist concept. We cannot hold the stick from both sides, to say, okay, we know that part of our power in America, probably even in Canada, that we have Jewish communities who can influence politically to speak to their congressmen, etc., etc. We can't say that you do not have the right to speak because we need you. And let me say one last sentence. And I almost hate myself when I say it. You pay the price, part of the price, for what we do here in Israel. We in Israel, we did not invent anti-Semitism. It was invented thousands of years ago. But I can tell you that part, I can't measure, but part of the anti-Semitism that you feel, you face in Canada, in Europe, in America, is because what we do here in Israel. By the way, I was for almost 40 years a member of the security community. And I can tell you, I have the intelligence to tell you that what happened in Ami building in Buenos Aires, when 86 people died, many of them were not Zionists, by the way. All of them were Jews, was the result of what we did in South Lebanon. This was the Hezbollah and the Iranian answer. So whether you like it or not, when we say Kol Israel Arevim Ze Lazeh, which means the people of Israel are responsible for each other, whether we like it or not, we have to accept it. And this is what I'm asking for you. The way I see it, it is your duty to tell us exactly what you see.
Ami, thank you so much for that invitation. And your name is Ami, which means I am of my people, and we are called Ameinu. And I think there's so much resonance to what you're saying. I really recommend that people read the last chapter. I think it really outlines Ami's vision. And I also suggest that people have a look at thirdnarrative.org, which is Ameinu's educational site. I think that it really will offer a lot of insight. When we were talking to Ami in preparation for this webinar, he told us that this book was translated. It was a bootleg translation into Arabic. And the only chapter they didn't translate was the last chapter, which is the chapter which has the vision and the hope. So it's a little ironic. I just like to thank everyone for attending today. I want to remind people that being a member of Ameinu is important for us, and that's something that we can explain more about. I want to let you know that on April 3rd, we're going to be doing our second event. Details will be coming soon. It's very promising. It will be as challenging as our session with Ami today. And I'd also like to thank Ami for his generosity, because we offered Ami an honorarium for today, and he said, please donate my honorarium to getting books for the people. So 75 of the people who registered today received a free e-book courtesy of Ami. And that's very magnanimous on your part, Ami. And I'd also like to thank our partners from Arts of Canada, with whom we are honored to collaborate in promoting a saner Zionism and a more nuanced understanding of Israel. I want to finish by wishing you all a good afternoon and thanking Ami for sharing his passion and hopefully lighting and igniting some of yours. And I invite you to continue to be a part of this conversation with us. And Ami, I hope that we will get to see you again soon in Israel. And thank you very, very much for doing this. Meital, thank you so much for your adept hosting today, and for all of you for your patience being in this room. I wish you all a fantastic afternoon and a good evening. And thank you very much.